The biggest thing you gave me was time.
I've always been a proponent of do the job, do it well.
When you're a family, everyone in the family has to be treated with respect.
I couldn't have done this without you. Coming here to K-State, you've been my confidant and in the room with me.
I want to know who you really are, right? You can put whatever you want on paper, but that doesn't really matter.
His teachers, they meet the learner wherever he is.
They don't care what you know.
They won't. So they know how much you care.
Be aggressive. That's win. Here we go.
Without further ado, I'll jump right into my first question. And it's really to open the door as wide as we can to allow you to take us through your journey, the journey that now has you sitting in the seat at Akron as the athletics director.
Well, thank you, Coach. And I see you rocking the Power Cat. I know that terminology about the Kansas Power Cat, and you spent some time with your branding experts at some conventions, and they walked me through the Kansas State brand, which is very unique. And I was honored to meet you out in Phoenix at the Fiesta Bowl event. And you're a tremendous leader and a coach in your own right as well. So my journey is similar to your journey in a lot of ways, and many others, particularly African-American men that navigate through either coaching in Division I college athletics or being on the administrative side. And it's a journey of trials and tribulations. It's a journey of, staying committed, even though you probably can't even afford your $200 rent apartment. And your mom is asking you questions about, what are you doing? Why are you chasing those ball teams around and making no money and you got a college degree? And where's the end game here? And so, like a lot of folks that come through our business, it started off almost like an apprenticeship. And I think athletics is very much like the movie business. It's like the record labels that you got to get discovered. But through that, you probably waiting tables, driving taxis and things of that nature to get discovered. And my journey began really in an odd spot. I just happened to be trying to figure out, speaking of movies, I went to Hollywood to try to be a stunt man. And I was living in Beverly Hills with a very wealthy childhood friend. And I realized living in LA, you need a car to get around. And I didn't know that being from New York. And I lasted all but 4 months there in LA. I ran out of money and ran out of living off a guy who had wealth. And he taught me a valuable lesson. He said, you can go out and party with the stars, but they go home to a big home. You come back to this apartment with no car. And it was kind of eye-opening. And so I journeyed back home and went back to Syracuse and worked the summer camp with Jim Boeheim. And actually it was Bernie Fine was running it, believe it or not. And, watching them play spades, working the camp, Pearl Washington, all these guys would show up to the Jim Boeheim basketball camp. And so I was like, heck, man, I might as well get into this coaching deal. This seems pretty cool. And then Scott Hicks was on the staff, and he had just got the job at SUNY Albany as the head coach when they were moving from Division II to Division I. And he said, well, if you get down there, you can get on my staff as a GA. But now I know the language. He said, you got to go talk to the AD for funding. And I know that story all too well. That coaches always say, go find the money from the AD. All right. So I said, all right, I got to go meet this guy. And growing up in the church, my dad was a PK. I'm a PK. And he was a Kojic preacher. He passed away about a year ago. But, presence been a lot. How you carry yourself, how you present yourself, how you speak to people, the empathy piece. And the first impression is the last impression. So, I went into that office and met the AD and said, and I was with a suit and tie, with a briefcase and the whole nine, like I was going on an interview. And I said to him, Scott sent me over here to get a GA to coach basketball. And to his credit, Milt Richards looked at me and said, well, I don't think you're going to be coaching basketball. But to his credit, he said, I think you could do a job like mine. He said, there ain't many people that look like you doing my job. And I'll give you a GA, but you got to come work in the athletic department and run facilities and things of that nature. And that's kind of how it all started for me. And then I went on, back in the days, you get a fax across the line about jobs. And I'd heard from several people that if you go to the ECAC out in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, that you probably get a big job in athletics because they got this Bushnell intern program and things of that nature. So I was like, okay, summertime, I applied, and the folks said, come on down to Cape Cod. I had never been to Cape Cod. And so I rolled down, and I didn't know it was very expensive. And I rolled to Cape Cod, and I had my family in the car. I got a speeding ticket with my grandmother and mother in the car going down there. I remember that. And I roll in there and meet these guys, and got hired on the spot to be the summer intern marketing guy. It was unbelievable. And the first trip I took in college athletics was at NACTA, which is the AD conference in Marco Island, Florida. And that changed my trajectory of my career. I show up, and as in the Lord works in mysterious ways. You don't know how these interactions play out. And as I show up with my boss, Sam Gwynn, who was a big Princeton alum and knew all the big people at Princeton, he was the marketing director, and I was his intern. And boy, was he tough. I mean, that guy would stand over me with a copying machine and watch me, make copies of checks for the convention and everything. It was brutal, but it was a wake-up call. And as we're going to check in the hotel, a redhead dude in a yellow sweater, I never forget, was standing there. Sam Gwynn said, hey, Mr. Mark, he said, Mark Murphy, I want to meet you, this guy named, this young intern. He's got big upside. He's a diamond in the rough. I want you to meet him. And Mark Murphy was then the AD at Colgate. And he said, that's great. He said, let's spend some more time talking. And by the time I left that convention, Mark Murphy had offered me an opportunity to come work for him at Colgate through this NCAA grant that he received. So then I left my master's on the line and went and worked right with Colgate. It all happened so fast. And then I went to Colgate, and then I got to Colgate, did a good job. It was a year program. And then the golf coach knew the golf coach at Columbia and said, we've got a full-time job at Columbia for like an assistant AD. Are you interested? And I said, sure, my deal is expiring. And so I ended up going to Columbia, and I never forget interviewing at Columbia. I was in my girlfriend's, at the time, her cousin's apartment in Brooklyn. And it was so hot in that apartment that I couldn't even get that tie on straight. It was a light blue tie I still have in my closet that I interviewed at Columbia. And I'm telling you, when it was hot, it must have been 120 degrees in that apartment. I actually literally don't think I slept. I think I sat on the stoops in Brooklyn, New York, preparing for this big interview at Columbia. And went to Columbia and met the AD, and they hired me right on the spot. And it was unbelievable. And it was the first time I'd actually made some money, because when I was at Colgate, I think I was making $150 a week or something, or a month. It was really low. And it was so bad that I had to get on Medicaid, because my mom said, you don't have insurance and you need to go down there and get Medicaid in case you break your ankle playing basketball. So I was on Medicaid and making no money, working at Colgate. And then I got my first job, and this was like 1998. And I think I was making like 45 grand a year with benefits. And that was crazy. That's a lot of money. I was like, this is a lot of money, but I owed student loans. But I was smart enough to know that you can put your student loans back or adjust them to your salary. So I was doing a lot of that back then, because when I left Syracuse, I had over $50,000 in student loans. So, and that's with financial aid and everything. I still came out of there upside down. And then Columbia, funny thing about Columbia, I learned a valuable lesson that's played true to my career here today, was I went out to lunch with the AD, John Reeves. And he took me to a sushi place. And I was like, sushi, I'm a guy from the neighborhood. What is this sushi stuff? And I tried to sit there and pick around the rice around the sushi. I didn't know what I was doing. And finally he said to me, you don't have to impress me with the food. He said, you've already been impressive. He said, you want to order something that you like? And I said, sure. So I ordered, I think, chicken teriyaki. And what he said to me, he said, you don't know this because you see me in this fancy suit and these clear glasses, and you think I'm probably coming from a high income area working at Columbia with the lapel ties. He said, but I grew up in Jersey City around the brothers, racing go-karts. And he said, you know what? When I first got this job at Columbia, I had a sweater with a knot on it. And my friends from Jersey City came over and yanked that sweater off and said, stop trying to pretend like somebody you're not. And he said, from now on, I want you to do one thing for me, is be who you are, be original. He said, if you change who you are, you're never going to get where you want to go. And those are valuable lessons. And, trying to learn how to speak properly without ebonics and versus, just different semantics you have to learn working in a work environment. And it was a learning curve, but I never changed who I was. And every now and then, Ebonics or the proper pronunciation wouldn't show up, but I never changed who I was at all. And that was a valuable lesson from Columbia's AD. And then again, it's all about networking. So when you start crossing the dots, from a networking standpoint, I met the AD, Earl Edwards, at UC San Diego when I was an intern at the ECAC. He was the only Black administrator that was on the committees down there for the conference. And he pulled me aside and said, I think you got big potential to stay in touch. Well, a job opened up at UC San Diego, and he called me up and he made me work for the job. He had all these big time guys from Louisville, I remember, in the pool, and he ended up hiring me. And the rest was history. I spent 5 years with him, learning a lot. And the reason why I left that job at Columbia, which I'll never forget, John Reeves said in the elevator, why would you leave Columbia University to go to California when you're like one of the few African Americans in the entire Ivy League with upside? Like, the world is in front of you in the Ivy League. Why would you go there? And I said, it's simple. He said, plus you taking the pay cut? I said, yeah, I'm gonna go make, probably 10 grand less going there. He said, well, why? I said, well, this guy told me I could supervise sports and learn how to be an AD. I said, doing tickets and marketing and running the Dodge Fitness Center is not going to get me closer to being where I want to be down the road. And he said, all right, makes sense. So long story short, moved to California, got out of athletics, went and worked at Cal State San Marcos to be the director of alumni and development. And that's a really big time school now. They're growing. When I was there, it was like 8,000. Now they're hitting 20,000. It's one of the fastest growing schools in all of North San Diego County. But what I learned in that job was that athletics was just a small piece of the university. I was literally the director of alumni for Cal State University System School. Not many people know that, but actually running the Alumni Association and doing all the grad packs and you name it, running things at graduation. And I did that for a couple of years, and athletics was my passion. Ironically, the athletic logo they use today was the logo I had created for them way back in like 2004, 2005. And we created the logo because I said, in order for us to get people excited about the school, which was new online, that we had to present like we had this athletic program to generate alumni interest, which is pretty cool. And so now they're grown, but it taught me a valuable lesson that athletics sometimes get caught up in silos and we do our own thing in our own area, and we don't realize there's a big macro university going on around us, and there's a lot of moving parts. And being a part of the Alumni Association, I had to go to art events. I had to meet with the deans and learn about their programs and things like that, learn about their alumni, do mixers and things of that nature, do advocacy. I had to go to Sacramento and lobby. At that time, we were trying to create a robust, which is Facebook now, program where we could get all 600,000 plus CSU graduates into one system to advocate on our behalf for funding in Sacramento. So valuable lessons learned there. And then my wife got a job in LA as a vice president of a company, and we needed to move to LA. And so I moved to LA, and I went up on an interview, literally, and I called the guy, AD, and said, hey, would you be interested in interviewing me for your associate AD job at Cal State LA? And he said, well, the position closed, but my daughter played softball at UC San Diego and told me how much of a hard worker you were. And I called over to HR and had them keep the position open just so we can interview you. I went up on the Tuesday to offer me the job on Wednesday. And so I became the associate AD at the time at Cal State LA for 2 or 3 seasons. And we had some of the best seasons. We went to the Baseball World Series. We finished 4th runner-up in cross country, track and field. To this day, it's still one of the highest runs they've ever had in the Sears Cup Trophy when I was there during that time. It was just remarkable. Great place to work, great place to learn. Ironically, the old Syracuse AD, Darryl Gross, is the AD there now. And so it's a great place. And then from there, I needed to go back and get that master's degree. I had interviewed for 3 different AD jobs, and I couldn't get any traction. And the presidents kept telling me, you're talented, but you're trying to supervise coaches with a lot of advanced degrees, and we need someone with that master's degree. So literally in 2008, and many people don't know this, I quit a job making 6 figures at Cal State LA, and my wife was a VP of a major Fortune 500 company, and I moved back to my mom's small apartment in Albany, New York. And I went to school to finish my master's degree before it expired. You know, you had 10 years. And so that's what I did. I went back to school, finished my master's degree, and recalibrated. And then as I'm looking for jobs, you know, when you get off the job market, it is not so friendly to you. Everybody wants to know why you have a gap in your resume and all this sort of stuff. But people didn't know that I took a bet on myself that if I got that degree, then I could open up some doors for me down the road. And it took a year and a half. And then finally, a community college said, yeah, we'll take a chance on you as the AD. And I said to my wife, hey, we're moving to Washington. I had never been to Washington. And I moved up there on a whim and took that job. And it was the most rewarding experience I had ever had because I played community college ball at Onondaga Community College before transferring to Syracuse, and that's a whole nother story. And to be around those student athletes that, you know, didn't have a lot of first generation kids from all walks of life, and to give them the quote unquote NCAA experience was what drove me day to day. And I know I know to this day that we had 35 schools. It's called the NWAC. It's Washington, Oregon community colleges have their own league. I don't know if many people know that, but it's not like the NJCAA or the California. You know, California has their own Jukes. Right. They had their own Oregon, Washington. And we would set those games up like it was the Final Four. You see me up there washing the backboard on the, you know, Windex, pulling out the bleachers. I had the score tables and the seats going. I mean, when you walked in there, you wouldn't know if you were at a D2 game or two-year college game. You know, I would mow the lawn at soccer to get it down to a perfect grade. I put my headphones on and I get that grass mower and I mow that grass down before the game so the grass looked nice and tight and low. And those are the things you did at the community college level. But, you know, I was trying to give those, I told people big time is where you're at, man. I'm all about making sure they have that experience where they are. And before you know it, you know, a lot of ADs in the league were not happy with me. They always tell me in the meetings, this isn't the NCAA. And I'd fire back. Well, most of our kids want to go to the NCAA. So why not try now to give them experience so when they go there and say, geez, my junior college experience was just as good as this deal. We signed an apparel deal. We had I was like, man, Adidas is like 2 blocks away from us. Why would we just go there and have them sponsor our program? And so we had all the uniforms going. It was unbelievable. We rebranded the program. And don't you know, we were one of the worst JUCO programs in the conference. And when I left, all 13 teams were in the playoffs. And then they subsequently, the next year, won the basketball title for the first time in school history, second time in school history. And don't you know, when I left, the last season I was there, both basketball programs were on an 18-game winning streak at the same time. It was unbelievable. And I still remember this old guy who used to work out in the fitness center, grabbed me by the neck and said, hey, man, we got this place rolling. And I said, we sure do. And it was awesome. And so from Clark, I don't want to, you know, belabor you, but, you know, from Clark College, we won. Then I got recruited by San Francisco State, took over the worst Division II program with a $1.5 million structural deficit. And when I left, again, we had won a national championship in the 4x4. The basketball team made the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. All of our teams were winning. And just got a text the other day that the baseball team made the tournament for the second time only in school history with the coach that we hired. Took him 7 years, but he had no scholarships. The facilities were terrible, and he stayed with it. And so from there, got recruited to Green Bay. Great experience. I'm sure their message boards have a story about me, but the reality is Green Bay was one of the lowest resource Division I programs in the country. It was tough. It was so low resource. It was times when a Division I AD was in the ticket office selling tickets and moving lines, but I didn't care because not long ago I was pushing bleachers out, and that was a good thing. So, but working at Green Bay, went to the NCAA tournament in women's basketball. Women's volleyball made the tournament for the first time in 15 years. The soccer team was coming off a championship, and the basketball team won the most games in postseason history for the school, even with the Dick Bennett days, as we went all the way to the CIT championship game and lost to Marshall. And then my president at Green Bay, who I'd worked with for 16 months, got the Akron job. And so I worked with 2 different presidents for almost 2.5 years at Green Bay. And then eventually he called me and said, hey, Would you like this opportunity? And what's interesting, I had a 5-year extension on the table from Green Bay and this opportunity to go work at a football program. And I said, you know what? Challenge yourself. And so here at Akron, and we've done remarkable. We've been to the basketball tournament 2 out of 3 years since I've been here. And we've only been to the tournament, Division I, 6 times, I think, or 5 times. And we've been there twice out of the 5 times. So the football team always needs improvement. But when we came in here, we had the worst football team in America. We were 130 out of 130 in the FBS. And now we're the only team in the FBS to lose 12 games by 6 points or less the last 2 seasons. So we're making progress there. But overall, this year was great. We won 4 MAC titles since I've been here. In less than 3 years, we've won 11 MAC titles. And we won our first cross-country championship in school history, had our first All-American in school history. And now we're on the cusp of a basketball player being the first player ever drafted potentially in the NBA, in Enrique Freeman. So it's been, it's been remarkable. I'm excited about what's here at Akron. We got a lot cooking, and we're just scratching the surface. I mean, all these coaches are now going into year 3, and I imagine that by next season, knock on wood, that the vast majority of our teams will probably compete for a championship going to the MAC tournament in their respective sports. So it's kind of been a journey. It's been a journey of ups and downs, fundraising, trying to hire good coaches, working with good people, coming in with a positive attitude day in, day out. And I think that's what you get when you bring that mentality. So I hope that kind of gives you a lot. That's a lot.
Well, you know what you gave me as I'm writing, I'm writing notes. But what you gave me was tenacity and perseverance.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I heard. Now, I also heard that, man, this dude, he likes to go work at places that are way above his budget.
Yes.
And he makes it work, right?
Yep.
And that, man, again, for the programs to have success with the experiences that you have as the leader, right? Your coaches that learn from you, the student athletes that experience the programs that you are behind setting up. It's no wonder why eventually you have success, right? Because it's just built that way.
Right.
And speaking of building, so the next thing I want us to talk about are core values. And at K-State, we first of all, when you talk about core values, I mean, you can have they're all over the place, right? You could say there's all kinds of things that you as a person, that your programs can choose to aspire to be. For us at Kansas State, we talk about discipline, we talk about commitment, we talk about toughness, and we talk about being selfless, right?
Right.
And those are the things that we, when you look at our program, that's what we want you to see, right? And so as coaches, that's what we push, that's what we talk about, that's what we honor, and that's what we demand, and so what I would like to ask you is what are your core values and how do they go into developing leadership on your athletic department team, on your administrative team?
Well, from an administrative team, our core values, which I think have gone with me every place I've been, is empathy. I think in order to be a great leader, you got to try to find out what makes people tick. And that comes across as having compassion for where they are and meeting them where they are, meeting them in their space and trying to motivate them to get to another level. The other piece, which will be a core value, working from a professional standpoint and speaking professionally, is competitive excellence. And I think that drives, when you talk about competitive excellence, that means we want our student athletes, when they go to an interview, to walk out of there feeling like they're going to get the job. So everything we do, we're going to compete and try to win. And if you have that mentality, things are going to probably work out in your way. And sometimes they may not work. But when you're competitive and there's an excellence tied to it, it drives you to another level. Even in failure, you learn the valuable lessons of how to try to get back to that. So competitive excellence, empathy, and the other piece that we really focus on is embracing academic excellence. I feel like college was a way, higher education paved the way for me to be in this career. But if I wasn't in this career, I'd have a good job and a good career and be able to provide for my family. And the power of education is more than just the books. It's learning about different cultures, learning about different ethnicities, learning about different races, religions, and it opens your mind up. And when you have 500 people from all walks of life, from different economical backgrounds, being in the academy of higher education, I think that's something that is you can't replicate that in many places. And so when you see a lot of things going on, we lose focus on name, image, and likeness and the paying the players. But when you come to higher education, not many people that you and I know would ever get a chance to be on a college campus. Nevertheless, working on a college campus in a leadership role. So we really preach those three things from a core value, which is academic excellence, competitive excellence, and empathy. And then our moniker, since we've been here, is find a way. When I got here, they had significant reductions. Akron has been through a lot as a university, downsizing colleges, no different than any schools in the Midwest where your populations are decreasing and enrollments are declining. And when I got here, I said, yeah, we're not back in 2008 when Mack Rhodes and those guys were here and they were building stadiums and doing things. So we've got to find a way. And so people don't know this, but we have one of the lowest budgets in the FBS. I know for sure we've got 4 associate ADs in our entire department. That's probably the lowest staffing in the FBS. But we're a small, mighty team that don't make excuses and we find a way. And so those are the kind of core values we try to preach across our way, that everybody can find an excuse if you want to find one. But if you find a way, you're going to get where you want to be.
Exactly. And as we look at, and we'll talk about the landscape in a minute, but as we look at the landscape, man, that has to be your mindset. Otherwise, you're gonna always be looking and making excuses because you don't have what they have, right? You gotta, like you said, you gotta find a way. You gotta do the best you can with what you have. So the next thing I want to talk to you about or ask about is the bus, right? We always talk on here about putting people on your bus. And so what I want to know is, when you look to find people to put on your staff, your administrative team, your coaches, what are the things that you look for? How do you identify the right people? How do you know this is a person that fits our culture? This is a person that we can bring into our team. What are the things you look for?
Yeah, well, first of all, I am a change agent because everywhere you go, it seems like I've always inherited programs that were down on their luck, and we've been able to bring them alive. But with that comes strategic change. You've got to be willing to go in, roll up your sleeves. And I think by default, every place I've worked, it's not like I go in and move people out. I think people get off the bus because they realize this thing is going too fast and I don't feel comfortable in this type of environment. And I think when we look to recruit people, we tell them the bus is moving quick and it's a strategy, which means we're not going to just run through the wall. We're going to try to find the back route to get through where the garage door open is there, and we open the garage versus running through it. And when you look at strategy, that's the way you approach it. But for me, when we look at people to bring into our organization, hard work, care for people, number one, care for students first mentality. And if you focus on the students and their experience, everything else will drive itself. And I can tell you, every place I've been said, this is too much, because we demand excellence. I talk to people, I get calls now because I started it, and I've gotten a lot better because we also preach work-life balance. But it would be shocking for me to get a call 11:45, like a text, you up, I want to talk about this highlight. Did you know X? Because we're all in the moment. And you want to find people that think of this as a lifestyle versus a job. And if you approach this as a lifestyle versus a job, then you won't be looking at your watch when it's time to check out. And you're all in, and you're thinking about all the sports. And that's the other thing we look at leaders, is that we're not going to be a football school. We're serving 500 athletes across all different platforms, and we need to meet them where they are. And I think when you have that level of service, you get all your coaches behind you, and you don't have coaches feeling alienated. Like, I talk to all of our coaches. It's times when some of our coaches say, man, you sound like you're an assistant coach for the soccer team. Well, because when you're all in, all your coaches should feel like you know their sport and their players, what they're doing, what type of offense they're running. I mean, I can tell you right now, lacrosse, I don't know much about lacrosse, but I sat down with the coach and understand what she's trying to accomplish and listening to her speak and then understanding and then be able to regurgitate it. So those are the type of things that we look for in staffing and coaches. And in coaches, it's more like recruiting. If you can't recruit, you're going to lose. I'm just tell you that right now. You could be the best X's and O coach. If you don't have any players, you're not going to win a lot of games. Because at the end of the day, players make plays, and the player that can't play at that level is probably going to wilt under the pressure. There's only so far you can go trying to chase a dude that runs a 4.240. He's going to go by you, and you ain't catching him. And so if you think you're catching him, you could cut the field off, but you ain't catching him. So I always tell coaches, if you really want to be really good, just go get a player that's better, athletic, better gifted, smarter than the dude across the way or the young lady, and you're going to probably win, or you're going to have at least a chance to win. And then, as you know, the coaching element comes in when you could take that athlete that's special and gifted and put them in a position to be really successful. And then that's when the magic starts to happen. So that's kind of what I think about that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
there's coach language right there.
You either chasing speed or you got speed.
Yeah, I like that.
And if you don't have it, you definitely chasing it.
You
right?
chasing it, yep.
So you kind of alluded to it earlier. We talk about the NIL space.
Right.
How has your job changed with this new landscape, with the things that you have to deal with from an NIL standpoint, dealing with donors in a different way, dealing with coaches and having coaches have to deal with players in a different way. How has that changed your job from your
Well, it's changed tremendously because as I was we're cutting down the nets in Cleveland, the president looked at me and said, we come a long way when the NLI guys are cutting down the nets with you. So it's pretty wild. I never thought we'd say that, but this is the universe in which we live. And student athletes now, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is how much you're going to pay me. It's not about the university, how great your facilities is, how much money you put in my pocket. And it's a different landscape because, the system that we all come up on was about the value of the education and then figuring out how you could top it off with different things. Like we're going to make sure we get adequate housing. We got these things to offer, facilities, equipment. We're going to go on these trips to go play. Now that's out the door. The bottom line is what type of cash you have for me in most cases. And it starts there and it's really uncomfortable. And I think where we are right now, I hope we get resolution on this deal because it's really chaotic because there's no rules and that we have rules, but they're not being enforced. And what happens is that you develop a kid and then they enter the portal and hold you hostage to get more money. And if you don't give them money, then they go to another school and you basically spent a lot of money on the front end trying to recruit this kid, with all these expenses, traveling 5 different locations to see him play and everything, all your investment from the university is out the door. And it's just really chaos, to be honest with you. So talk about changing life. It's changed the whole way we think about college athletics. And particularly, it's not impacted so much some of the Olympic sports, but football and basketball is just out of control right now. And we just need to know what the rules. I've always learned, just tell me what the rules of highway are and I won't get a speeding ticket. But right now, no one's obeying stop signs. Everybody's running red lights. Everybody's running speed limit and no one cares. And if there's an accident, no one cares. No one's calling insurance. A lot of hit and runs going on right now. That's the way I look at college athletics, the way the NIL's changed everything. And from a perspective of growing up, I'll be straight with you. When I was at Syracuse, we had to take some of the Florida kids to the Salvation Army to get winter coats. Because they coming up there without winter coats, they don't know the area. They don't know anything about living in upstate New York. And I remember to this day being on a bus with McNabb, Roland Williams, my good friend, and NFL guys looking for who's cooking after the football game, trying to find food after we just watched these guys play in the Carrier Dome with 60,000 people there. So yeah, I think there's got to be some sort of compensation model when if you turn it into a business model versus what it was intended for, then yeah, you need a compensation. You can't just take all this money and make all these people rich, coaches, ADs included, myself, and not give something back to the student athletes who are putting their life, literally their limbs on the line every weekend. Because we all know, you've been there, coach, you know injuries can stay with you a long time. There's a lot of former athletes walking around with hip replacements and knee replacements because they gave it all for their university. So to me, I think is the right thing to do, but I think we need to come up with a system that works for everyone, so no one's, there's rules in place. But it's very disruptive, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and I think, the honesty of it, of course, the solution is I think it's like 4 degrees above my pay grade. But
Yeah.
the commitment that I as a coach make is that, when I still believe that this coaching thing that I do is about relationships.
Right.
Yes, the society and the landscape is telling me that this kid only cares about money. Well, you know what?
Right.
In my orbit, this is how we're going to do it. Yes, just like you said, man, we putting
Yeah.
life and limb on the line. Yes, there has to be a model to take care of, to make sure that there is sharing in there somewhere, but that's not going to be our focus, right?
Well, if you take a kids that want money only, I think that's a dangerous slippery slope as well, because if they're hard into it. I've heard softball coaches tell me that they go recruit a pitcher in the 9th grade and offer them a scholarship, and by the time they get to college, they're a shell of themselves because they already got paid, and there's no incentive to do the work to stay on top to be a dominant pitcher. And that's the dangers of when you recruit young kids and there's money involved. Their work ethic, are they going to stay committed to it, or are they going to just check out and just be on scholarship and just collect, is what some of the coaches call. The other piece this NIL thing is really having an impact on is staffing. You're in the academic center and you got a football player making 3 times as much as you making through NIL, yet you got to sit here and try to tutor this kid to keep him eligible. It's getting really uncomfortable. Or athletic trainers. Why do I need to be here? This guy's now driving a fancy car and I'm making $40,000 a year taking care of this guy. And so you're starting to see a lot of backlash within athletic department staff that I'm hearing because of the NIL and how much these kids are making. And then you have staffers who aren't making the money having to be responsible for taking care of them. So we're at an inflection point now in college athletics with a lot of different things going.
Yeah, and again, the adults, we have to be the adults, right? Young people, man, they're gonna do what we allow them, what we train them, what we help them to do. There's great opportunities out there. There really are. I mean, there's relationships with businesses that can do where we can find things that we couldn't find back in the day. But we just have to do a great job. I just believe this as a coach of training our young people, right? Of making sure that, when I deal with my kids, like if I allow them to eat candy, man, them dudes will have 7 lollipops in each hands, open the whole time. Okay, our young people, they really don't want that, right?
Right.
Like my kids, they know their stomach is going to be blown up.
Right.
So they rely on us. They rely on us to teach them, to help them, not just to let them go free crazy. You know what I mean? They don't expect us to do that. They really expect us to step in and put guidelines. Like you're saying, that's what they want. And so we have a responsibility to do that. Not to hold them back, not to trap them, not to cut them off, not to allow these things to happen, but to put guidelines, because we got a responsibility to protect them from. So there's some people out there who are laying in wait, to take advantage of them.
Big time.
And so, that's a big time deal. I knew that we would go down the road on that question.
Oh yeah. Well, the other piece is one of the things we've done a great job of in our NIL space is we partner with very different technology, for open doors, but we've taken it a step further. We've got a couple of finance alumni in the area, and we've really had all of our athletes who have NIL deals work with them on financial literacy, making sure they pay their taxes. Because a lot of these cats got this $150,000 NIL, and they don't realize that a 1099, you're taxed at a certain rate, and you need to pay that back, or you're going to have the IRS looking for you. And so we've done, I think, a great job reminding our students, like you said, giving them guidance that just because you get paid, you got to show an account for that. This is like not under the table money. Someone's filing a 1099 that gave you that money, and they're going to be held accountable for it. You just can't wire someone $150,000 and there's no exchange of goods and services. So we really hone in on that. We try to connect with the people we know running these this NIL to be mindful of these things, and I think that's about all you can do at this point.
Yeah, again, I think that's a big responsibility that we have because, I've talked to my players about the tax portion, and I said, hey man, that's grown people's problems when you have tax issues, right?
Right.
And so I think that a lot of times guys have good representation, but sometimes they don't. And so just to be able to educate them, to have them have an awareness and understanding, I think is a big responsibility for us. My next question is, and this is, I don't know, I got two more questions really, and they're having to be, really cool questions for me. As a coach, man, what I get to do, I get to bring in little Johnny, and little Johnny, he thinks he has discovered the world when it comes to defensive back play, because that's what we told him throughout recruiting. We recruited him and we told him he's the next Ronnie Lott. But when he gets there, he realizes he does not know everything, right? And so it's a cool moment for me when I see it click for that guy, right? When I see the struggles up and down, sometimes off the field, right? Sometimes he can't get right. He can't get the academics where he needs to. But then all of a sudden it clicks. And most of the times, for me, it happens on the field. But sometimes, like I said, it happens off the field. And that's like game day for me. My game day is not always game day, right?
Correct.
Sometimes it's like the example I used before. But my question is what is your game day, right? When you're not a coach, you're not out there coaching them, but what is that thing that like drives you, gets your spirits going and gets you fired up and where you can say, yes, we did it. What is that game day emotion? What does that come from for you?
Well, I think it's being an AD, you got a lot of game day moments, from graduation to securing a large gift, to winning a championship, to meeting with SAC and understanding the challenges of the athletic department and being able to fix it. And you're like, yeah, we got that done for the SAC. So there's a lot of game day moments in the AD's chair, to be quite honest with you. And if I went down the path of trying to think about them all, I'm sure I would miss something. But even the fact that there's a game day moment where a kid came in and, on the football team and had really, really bad grades, and this guy is about to graduate and hasn't had a failing grade since they enrolled at Akron. And I don't think this kid probably was reading at much more than the 8th grade level when they got here. But the person took academics serious, stayed in the academic center, got tutors, and I think the guy got like a 3.0 this last semester, if I'm not mistaken. His grades just came out. But that's a game day moment, watching someone that took it upon themselves. And when we first got him here, the academic team was like, man, this kid ain't gonna make it. And now this kid about to graduate is unbelievable. And that's a game day moment. And then, you see kids get all in trouble off the field and they learn the valuable lessons and see them mature. It's just a wonderful deal. Or game day moment is, watching your team. We won the MAC championship in basketball, and going in the locker room, the coach and the players are telling me to put that sticker on that deal where you punch your ticket. Now, that's a student athlete deal. And I'm sitting in the locker room with the MAC media people hovering over us, and they're egging me on, you got to do it, AD. And I'm like, really, that's not for me to do. And I'm saying that on the camera. And it's like, nope, you got to do it. And by them telling me to do that, and it went viral on the internet, it said a lot. It said that these student athletes actually value the work we're doing as a department. And this magical moment where the captain of the team is supposed to put the A on for the NCAA punch a ticket, They asked the AD to do it, and the coaches included. And at the end of the night, the coach came up to me and said these words. Coach Drove said, listen, coaches win games, ADs win championships. And he went through a litany of things that we did in our basketball program that he said not many people in your seat would have taken that chance or done that or did that. And if you didn't do that, like for example, I give you an example. I didn't know, we didn't have the money to go to Puerto Rico to do a foreign tour trip, but I told him, let's book it and we're going to fundraise and find a way. And we found a way, but our star athlete, who's going to be most likely drafted, had never been to Puerto Rico, and his dad was from Puerto Rico. And going into the summer, we had never been on a foreign tour, and we knew he was going to command a lot of money coming off, his first team All-MAC performance the year before, and the year before that, going to the tournament, being the tournament MVP. And when he found out that we were going to Puerto Rico for the foreign tour, his whole mind was wrapped around that trip to Puerto Rico. It wasn't about the transfer portal and leaving and going and cashing in. And he wasn't that type of guy anyway. But those are the little things that mean a lot and called retention. You know what I mean? Retention is a big thing what we do. And the coaches start going down that thing, talking about how they win games and ADs win championships. And it really got me emotional. And so you talk about a game day moment. That was one of those game day moments where it should have been for the student athletes celebrating, and they get this suit and tie. And since we're being casual, I tell you, not P. Diddy or Suge Knight. I know they both got their legal problems or whatever. But one of the things that Suge Knight always said in his little records, if you grew up in the 90s listening to hip hop, he said, if you want to not have the producer dancing in the front of the videos like P. Diddy, and you want the producer behind the scenes getting things done, come to Death Row. And I always remember that. I don't want to be the producer dancing around and trying to get in the way of the talent or the coaches or the athletes. I want my role as the AD to be behind the scenes as the producer, making things happen behind the scenes and not be the visible, and let the talent, which is the coaches and the student athletes, be on the stage. So that was pretty much a game day moment there.
Oh man, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
And for coaches that, there may be a lot of coaches who grab the mic who are in front and doing their thing, but generally, man, coaches, that's what they do. They like to see, they like to develop it. They like to cook it, and then they like to allow others to eat it, right? And they like they like to watch them smile as they experience it. That's being the student athletes and that being the fans. My final question is, that young Charles Guthrie, man, that dude, he had some stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you could talk to that guy, right? If you could talk to young Charles Guthrie, knowing all that you know today, being through all the experiences, traveling all the roads that you've traveled, what would you tell that dude from what you know to help him navigate a little bit better? What would you tell him to help his life be a little bit better?
I think I would tell him that family is always more important than chasing the next job. Through my travels, the one thing I didn't do, and if I can go back to do it, I'm trying to repair it, is I didn't spend enough time back with my mom and my sisters in my hometown. They never left. And I missed a lot of Christmas, Thanksgivings, and things of that nature because I was out chasing jobs versus chasing family. Yeah. And since then, and particularly losing my dad, who I was close with, but I grew up in a single parent home, just FYI. My mom raised 5 kids by herself, and my dad was a preacher, go figure. But he married another lady from the church, and they lived their own life for 40 years, and that's a whole nother book topic. But I've always had respect for my dad. And when he passed away, what I realized is when his wife's family was talking about him, they knew a man that my brothers and sisters never knew. And it was really hurtful to my sisters because they never knew anything about my father. And I think if I would have been around a little bit more, I could have because every time I would go home, because I was the guy in the job, and you bring everyone together. Similar to you, coach, you're a big time Division I coach. When you go home, everybody seems to come over to the house. And I felt like I could have done a better job throughout my career bringing everyone together in the house. And like I said, since I've gone back and I've done a better job, but I think I missed a lot of graduations. I don't think I've done a good job with my nephews and nieces, spending time with them. And I think if I can go back, I would do that different.
One of the marks, I think it was Kevin Anderson, said that one of the marks of a great leader is that they have the ability to be vulnerable, right? They have the ability to be able to admit their wrongs. They have the ability to be able to talk about how they could be better, right? Because if you can't do if you can't do it, you can't expect a running back to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't expect the player to do it if they never get that from the leader. And so I really do. I appreciate your candor in sharing that, because hey man, little do that we know, people who watch these things, they're going through the same stuff, right? And it's funny when you go through it, because what you just said, man, that's something that I could definitely hold on to, because I remember talking to Joe Kynes, and Joe Kynes and I worked together for years, a few years back. And Joe, he always said that your family is not like a pillow, right? When you get a pillow, when it's time to go to sleep, you get that pillow, you cuddle up on that pillow, and then when you're done with the pillow, you just throw it away. He said, you can't do that with your family. He said, your family, when some job says to you, okay, clean out your office, get out, you still gonna be that family. You know what I mean? You still gonna have family. And so I appreciate that, because again, it is a signal again to me that, okay, you gotta make sure you're doing better. The encouraging point to us both is that you got tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Well, who knows? You might not have tomorrow. You got right now. You know what I'm saying? You got right now. And so I encourage you, and I encourage myself, let's just make sure we do. Let's make sure we do better. Man, I appreciate your time, Charles.
Thank you, Coach.
It's been cool to do these things, because each time it's a little bit different, right? And that's the remarkable thing about leadership. That's the remarkable thing about what we do, right? Because as a coach, I had a cornerback once. I'm trying to get this guy to use proper technique while playing cover two, right? And whatever the words I was using, man, I just couldn't get it to click. Like, it was not clicking. One day I was visiting a high school coach, and he described the way he teaches it a certain way. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try that with this player. Man, I tried it, and I could see the light bulb come on in that kid's head. Right? And so each one of us has a different way to approach leadership. Each one of us has a special road that we've traveled that has developed our leadership. And again, that's why diversity is so important,
Big
because
time.
you see it this way, I see it that way. We both looking at the same thing. We both want the same thing, but we've traveled different ways to get there. And if we can share in that diversity, we can respect that diversity, man, we can accomplish a lot more than we could if we didn't have diverse thought. So again, I appreciate you, and appreciate your friendship.
Well, yes, and I was speaking of diversity. I've always that's been a big deal for me. And if you look at our leadership team, we are the most diverse leadership staff, I would bet, in the FBS. Black AD, African-American deputy AD, African-American CFO, female SWA. I'd match our leadership team amongst the best. And it all starts there, because when our student athletes and our coaches see people that look like them or can relate to them, it matters. We hired the first female African-American coach in women's lacrosse at Akron. And every pool we've had since I've been here has had diversity top and bottom. And what people don't know is that everyone says, well, you're a black AD, you should hire black coaches. What people don't understand, the coaches you want to get that are good got a lot of offers, and they necessarily ain't coming to Akron. I mean, so when you're talented, it doesn't matter what color you are, you have chances. And it's hard to get people and convince them. They may think they want the job, but then they start kicking the tires saying, well, I got a raise at my last place. They want me to stay. Because no one's going to let, particularly a minority candidate who's really good at their job, walk away. They're going to probably come back to them and offer them a more raise. And so that's the one challenge I've seen trying to hire diverse coaches, is that whether it's females or diverse candidates, is that it's not a slam dunk. And people don't know the insides and outsides of how you're trying to recruit people. It's no different than recruiting a student athlete. It's not that easy. No one's going to let good talent walk, particularly when we're all committed to diverse environments. So I just want to throw that out there.
Right. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you do, your commitment to excellence. And we're gonna do everything we can to put this out there and let everybody know the great things that are going on at Akron under your leadership.
Oh, I appreciate it, Coach. And good luck, best of luck to you. You guys are doing a hell of a job at Kansas State. What a program. And everywhere you've been, you've won. So I know you're in a position you work now where you're not a head coach, but I'm wishing to see you on the sidelines with the main headsets on. And I know it's going to happen because I've been around you, and someone would be really lucky to have you lead their football program and lead their men. And so that's my wish the next time down the road that we see you in that role. So continue success.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
Okay, take care.